episode 66 of Off Script with Trish Glose, intimate interviews and fun conversations with interesting people. In front of my microphone today is Eric Eisenberg. Hello, Eric.
Good morning, Trish.
Good morning. I've renamed you Dr. Eric Eisenberg because Eisenberg just has like a doctor sound to it.
It does, and where I come from, there's probably lots of Dr. Eisenbergs.
There you go.
Although I didn't quite get there.
Well, you are the Director of Dining Services at the Rogue Valley Manor.
That is my current role, yes.
Okay, you have lots of letters after your name.
I do, and I'm going to add a couple more later in the week, too,
Ooh,
hopefully.
CEC and CCA. I'm assuming these are culinary certifications.
Ding, 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 ding. Well done.
Thank you. I did my research.
Good.
Just
yes.
a touch.
They are culinary certifications through an organization called the American Chefs Federation, or ACF. And the CEC is Certified Executive Chef.
Okay.
And the CCA is Certified Culinary Administrator.
Dang. I did not know I was in the presence of such greatness this morning.
You know, it's kind of a big deal.
We are kind of a big deal, Dr. Eric Eisenberg. I met you a couple weeks ago when we shot a West Coast Flavor segment. We were promoting the Oregon wine experience.
Yes.
We're going to talk about that in a little bit. We're also going to talk about your journey to the Rogue Valley Manor. We talked a little bit about it on the day of the shoot, specifically in a Facebook Live. Fascinated that you, kind of where you've come from and how you got here, which is why I wanted you on this podcast so I could share your life story with all of my listeners.
Well, we're definitely talking about my favorite subject, which is myself. Just ask my wife.
Okay, cool. We're going to get along great then.
Okay, good.
Okay, so where are you from originally, Eric?
Well, I grew up on the East Coast. I'm a Brooklyn boy. I was born and raised in East Flatbush, Brooklyn, the youngest of three sons.
Okay.
And we moved to the suburbs when I was in elementary school.
Suburbs are where?
So just north of New York City.
Okay.
In Westchester County.
Tree-lined streets.
Tree-lined streets. You know, it's funny. I took a trip back there recently and with my family to show my kids where I grew up. Mm-hmm. And it was so small and kind of meh, you know, and I just was really surprised. I remember it being so grand, but it was, at the time, it felt really big and really grand, and we had a really good life growing up in the suburbs.
Yeah, well, because you're tiny then, so maybe everything is this big around you. Our first house that I remember, my room was ginormous, and then I know if I went back now, it would be so small.
Yeah, it's funny how that perspective changes, and I think your own perspective changes as you grow. Yeah. Not just physically, but emotionally and as a human. But
let's
yeah,
hope
so that
it
was,
does.
Yeah, let's
hope
hope so, right?
So you grew up. You said that you're the baby.
I am
the baby. That's why we have so much in common.
Are you the baby too?
Yes, I have this theory. I've mentioned it a lot on this podcast. People are probably sick of it. I don't care. Older siblings, the oldest, they have a lot in common. They're usually overachievers and, you know, they have goals and very type A. I'm type A too, but the babies are like, give me all the attention, you know, look at me, watch me, kind of an attention whore, I call it. Mm-hmm. I mean, were you that way?
Totally.
See?
Yeah.
See?
I mean, I remember doing little skits and stuff in the living room, you know, when...
Ding, 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 hello, right here. Yeah, for sure.
And my youngest now also, I have three sons.
Love it.
So it's really quite an interesting legacy, and we're very much the same in that way. Although, you know, it's interesting. I see a lot of myself in all three of my kids, but the little one definitely has that. Yeah. Look at me, pay attention to me. I am the star of the show, kind of.
Let's hope you see yourself in all of your children. Right?
Yeah, that's true.
No scandals there. So growing up with two brothers, two older brothers, did you guys get along?
For the most part, they're a bit older than I am, so I was kind of that, let's try for a girl, baby. That's what my mother always told me anyway. And there was a little bit of a gap, and they were often responsible for me. Like my parents would go to the theater, they would go out, and they would go into the city, and my brothers were kind of stuck paying attention to me or having to babysit me.
Sorry, guys.
So there was a little bit of, I think, animosity there a little bit. And then as we got a little older, my eldest brother and I, you know, when I was kind of in that post-puberty, 12, 13, 14 age, we were like cats and dogs. But right now, as we're all old men, it's great. You know, it's really a great relationship. it's amazing how that circles back. And I keep trying to tell my kids that. I'm like, you may get at each other's throats right now, but trust me, there is going to be a day when the three of you are all you have.
I was just going to say that same exact thing. So we definitely need to remember our siblings. You moved to the suburbs when? How old were you?
I want to say second or third grade.
Oh, little.
Yeah,
Okay.
I was pretty little.
What did mom and dad do?
My parents were both educators and both worked in special ed. And so my mother was a special ed teacher, and my father was a high school teacher initially. And then as they grew in their careers, they were both administrators in the New York City Board of Education for
Awesome.
special education.
There is a special place for people who work in education, but special education, you have to have a lot of patience and a lot of heart.
Yeah, speaking of a big deal, my dad was the executive director of special ed for the city of New York.
Wow.
Well, the assistant, actually. And he was instrumental back in the early 70s for really developing the whole concept of mainstreaming special ed children into public school. It really started, there was a high school, Edward R. Murrow High School in New York, that was an arts school, and he was put in charge initially of developing that school as a special ed school altogether.
Wow.
For only special ed kids. And he said he would only do it if he could create a school in which kids were mainstreamed. And that really was he was really the pioneer in developing that kind of program. And that's what we know today, right? We would never think of cloistering a special needs child in a school, a whole building by themselves. And I'm really proud to say, I really just learned this recently too, by the way. I'm really proud to say that's a legacy that my father left that I'm super proud of and feel like that's the kind of thing I can tell my kids about their grandfather, who they never met, by the way. So
a little ahead of his time, really.
Oh, yeah, I mean, absolutely. That's the whole thing about pioneering, right? You want to be remembered maybe it's not that you want to be remembered, but you will be remembered for doing something groundbreaking. And I'd say there's a little bit, that's also the type of personality, I think, in that look at me type of child that we were, where you want to say, hey, not only do I want people to recognize me, but I want them to recognize me for doing something important.
Oh my gosh. I'm honestly, it's so funny you said that. I'm going through that at this very moment in life, as far as what do I want to do with myself that I can leave a stamp somewhere, even if it's a small stamp. But doing something positive and putting something out there in the world that people like and appreciate. It's like a public service almost.
It is.
I think of that. That's funny you said that. I'm going through all that right now in my life. So I was going somewhere with this. So they were both educators. Did they essentially retire from the education system?
They did. My father, fortunately, was able to retire really young because he started really young.
Okay.
So he was 54.
Or so
young. When he retired, and then he got into the antique business. So he schlepped around all over the suburbs and all over the city, and he would go to estate sales. We didn't call them garage sales in Westchester.
No.
In Westchester, they were
sales.
estate sales, and he would get up at 4:00 in the morning and go wait in line. And he had quite our whole basement and entire garage was filled with banana boxes, he dealt in china and glassware and that kind of thing.
Okay.
So that was a big part of my sort of late teenage years, was going around with my dad to antique shows and helping him set up and break down and all kinds of stuff. So that was pretty cool. And my mother, unfortunately, she did retire, but due to health concerns. And I did lose both of my parents when they were fairly young, and I was fairly young. So they have not been around for, going on 25 years now. So it's been an interesting experience not having them in my life, but yet they were both such incredible people that I remember in my mind anyway, that they have stayed with me. And that's one of the things I think about as a parent myself, is really trying to create a memory, I guess, for my kids, so that when I'm gone, whenever that happens, hopefully not for a very, very long time, but that they'll have a memory of me like I have of my folks.
Well, yeah, and I'm sure sounds like that was pretty difficult losing them.
It was. I was in my 20s.
Oh, that's really young.
Yeah, and my mother was sick for a very long time, and my dad was sick for a very short time. But it was right after my mother passed away. My father was diagnosed with lung cancer, and then died within a year. So it was really, it was trying times, as you can imagine, as someone just coming to grips with their own adulthood, and it was interesting.
Well, it's nice to hear that you carry them with you, just as far as memories and stories. Because really, that's all you have left, really.
Yeah, I'm at the age now where many of my friends' parents are kind of at the age where they're starting to pass away, and we've experienced that quite a bit in the last few years. And my mother-in-law passed away this year, and I feel like the best advice I can offer in that time of such despair and dismay, because it feels like there's no way through it when you're experiencing it yourself. Even if your parent is very, very ill for a while, there is a sense of relief, but it's still such a great and deep loss. And I feel like the only thing that I can really offer, and the thing that has really stuck with me, because now I'm 25 years past it, is that there comes a time when all of the pain and all of the discomfort and all of the challenges that you dealt with in losing them, up to the time of losing them, it fades away over time, and all you're left with is everything that you loved about them.
That's very hopeful.
And it really, so now, when as I already have today, when I talk about my parents, I remember them as being perfect people. Like I never yelled at them, "I hate you,"
Exactly.
Get out of my room, which of course I did. And I mean, all of the stuff that you experience with your parents, we all experience with our parents. After their loss, you're left with only the best stuff.
Yeah.
Really.
And I wonder if that's your brain's way of just flushing out that negative and really holding on to the positive of what you loved about them.
Yeah.
Was food a thing in your house growing up?
Yeah, big time.
Okay, how so?
My dad was a gourmand, just like I was. We loved to eat and loved
Did they
good
cook?
food. Oh, my mother was a good cook. My dad was a great cook.
Okay.
And my mother grew up in a extremely Orthodox Jewish household where when we had to go to Grandma Yetta's house, it was torture because we knew it was the boiled chicken that was from the pot of soup. And kosher chickens back in the day, I mean, they still had like feathers around the feet and stuff. It was just disgusting. And so the cousins and I and my brothers, we would be at my grandma's house, and we knew it was, oh my God, it's the boiled chicken in the saltless, chicken broth.
Oh, Grandma Yetta.
And it was just, she was such a terrible cook. And that was what my mother grew up with.
Right.
So it wasn't until she met my dad that she was kind of got to experience, food. My father grew up with a younger sister and a single mother. And so he was very self-sufficient and knew how to cook and sew. And
Also Jewish household?
Also Jewish household.
Okay.
And although ultra-Orthodox, zero faith. It was like culturally Jewish somewhat,
Sure,
but not religious in any way, shape, or form. In fact, the traditional bar mitzvah for boys is at 13. My father never had one, so he had one at 62.
Good for him.
So he kind of found religion later in life, as my mother was kind of letting it go. It was
Isn't
kind of
that
interesting.
funny?
Yeah, it was an interesting situation. But so my father loved to eat, and I have so many great food memories with my father. All the things that he exposed me to. And he also loved to entertain. So he was also an entertainer. He had sort of a theatrical background as well. And he was sort of that life of the party kind of person.
I love this man.
And bigger than life. You would have loved him.
What was his name?
Donald
Donald
Eisenberg. And everybody loved him. He was one of those unilaterally loved people. One of the memories I have is that we would be in New York City walking down the street, and this would happen all the time. Mr. Eisenberg, you were my theater teacher at Lafayette High School in 1950. And they would remember him, so many people.
Of course.
In the middle of a city of millions. He was always recognized. It was such an amazing, and that was one of the things I'm like, wow, I just want to touch people that way. Anyway, he loved food. And we were always entertaining in my house, and we were always having company. Company was coming over, and there were always just platters of amazing food and things cooking. And I just remember a few of the dishes that he was really well known for. He made a lasagna that was a mile high. This thing was unbelievable, with every conceivable meat and cheese and crusty around the edges, and it was just phenomenal. And then also some cultural dishes, like it won't sound good to you, like if I say he made an amazing stuffed cabbage. But
Sounds amazing.
But there was just he just loved to be in the kitchen and loved to have people in his home and loved to have people around. And that was really sort of the basis that started it all.
Oh, me. I'm picturing martinis, too, at these company gatherings.
Scotch on the rocks, but yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah, there
so
was always
classy.
a tumbler filled with ice with something in it.
So
Yes.
classy. So this is kind of where it started for you. Was food a theme for you growing up then? Like even going into college, or what did you want to do?
Well, so food is a theme through life. Just again, as Jews, it's
Yes.
a cultural where food is connected to every celebration. So there's always food around, not just, and a lot of just weekday meals. I remember my mother always feeling like I always remember my mother putting something on the table, which is something we don't even really do today. My kids are always grazing, and we're always grazing, and that might just be the pace at which we live today. But
Right.
I always remember there being something on the table that felt special, even on a Wednesday. But food was not my thing. I was going to go into the theater. I was encouraged by my parents even as well, because my dad sort of had an unrealized dream of being in the theater himself, and so he was very encouraging. And so I went to college all through high school. I did theater, and all through college, I was a theater major in college and I went to a small school, so I had a very prolific theater experience because there were so few people around. So it was really great.
That was smart.
It was really great. I mean, I had applied to other schools, which I didn't get into, but I ended up in a small liberal arts college that had, I had the opportunity to be on main stage productions, my first semester as a freshman. So
Wow.
it was really, I got to do a lot of theater in college. But I also needed work study. I needed some money while I was at school, so I worked. I'll rewind just a touch to say I went to a boarding school for high school.
Okay.
Also a very unique and weird experience in that it was a Quaker school, a Friends-run school. And it's because I had a lot of trouble in school, in public school, in sort of a big suburban high school where there were over 3,000 students. And I just was...
Lost?
Yeah, I wasn't doing well. I was following all the wrong paths.
Were you
And
getting into trouble?
I was getting into trouble.
Uh-oh.
And so I ended up in boarding school, and I don't want to make it sound like it was prison. It was not. It was a very liberal kind of environment, really honestly run by hippies, and it was really cool in a lot of ways, and it helped me to find who I am as a person. I mean, a lot that I learned there, I still carry with me, and so we had to work there too. So that was part of our school, is that we had to kind of have a job around the school, and mine was working in the dining hall as a dishwasher.
Interesting.
And the dishwasher led to helping, Fred the cook peel potatoes, and then it was just those, because I had done that at home as a kid, so I just had more interest in that than washing dishes or doing yard work or whatever else they wanted us to do. So I really had this introduction to working in a commercial kitchen, in high school. So when I went to college and I needed work study, that was what I did. I went and got a job as a dishwasher in the dining hall, which led to becoming the chef's assistant. And then I was the short order cook in the student union.
Awesome.
And so just all of those things kind of progressed to the point where then I graduated from college and I got to New York City. And here I am with a degree in theater performance and lighting design in one hand.
Okay.
And this ability to work behind a stove in the other.
So you're a typical actor then,
Yeah.
right?
Although, my girlfriend at the time, I got a job as a cook right away in a pretty nice restaurant that my dad hooked me up with. And I ended up quitting that job because my girlfriend at the time, who was also a would-be actress, said, if you're going to be an actor, you have to be a waiter so you have a more flexible schedule and you can get out and go on auditions, and you're wasting your life working in the kitchen and all of this. And so I did that. I left. I left working in the kitchen of this really nice restaurant called the Manhattan Ocean Club, and I ended up working at the Marriott Marquis in Times Square. And I got a job. They were on a massive hiring campaign because they were building the hotel. So this was in 1985 or 86. And I got a job working in a restaurant, a buffet restaurant, in just above Times Square in the theater district, in this massive, incredible hotel, which at the time was the only thing in Times Square. It was still a complete and utter hole.
Crazy.
Like, today it's like an amusement park, but then it was disgusting. And I actually lived just a couple of blocks from there as well. And it was some of those early 4 o'clock in the morning trips home, were pretty incredible. But so this job, again, and just because of the nature of who I am, that job led to a job in a much fancier restaurant in the top of the building when they opened that, and got to wait on lots of celebrities. And it was the place to be in 1986. Although the revolving restaurant on the top of the Marriott Marquis today, doesn't sound like it's the place to be, and it probably is not. But when it opened, it truly was.
Well, sure.
It was quite a hot spot. So we did that for a few years, and made a ton of money at that age of my life, and it was just really, really stupid. But there was always something, like, it just never fit. It was never the right fit for me, and I ended up going into management because I wanted something more, and I ended up managing the bars in the hotel, one of many managers of these giant bars in the lobby, and they overlook Times Square, so you can imagine a couple of New Year's Eves, on this bar that revolves and it's sitting over there.
Man.
It was a good time to be in your early 20s,
For sure.
working in New York City,
Making some good money.
and
Right.
it was all pretty cool. But the kitchen just kept calling me back,
Did this dream of being in theater, was it fading at this point?
It was morphing, because I believed it could happen, but I got involved in a couple of small black box things, and off Broadway things, and these little black hole theaters that you find all over New York,
Right.
involved in really crazy productions of stupid things, and no one was nice, and everybody was mean and challenging, and it was so cutthroat and so dog eat dog. Everything I loved about the theater, just I couldn't find. I guess I didn't have the wherewithal to really withstand all that. Like,
Right.
it wasn't. I loved doing it, but I didn't love it enough to be abused to pursue it.
You have to love it enough.
Yeah, you really do.
Well, and there's something to be said about being in a kitchen as a chef is very theatrical. And it's your talent on display in front of this person, and they're either going to love it or they're going to hate it, and they're going to critique the crap out of it.
It's funny, I never made that correlation before. But yes, that's true. I mean, today there's this whole chef as celebrity kind of thing that didn't exist when I got into cooking. I mean,
Yeah.
it was a vocation.
Right.
It was just starting to, have a little more of a cachet. The Food Network had not even been born yet. Like, it was not something people didn't. You watch Julia Child, and
course.
you watch Graham Kerr,
Of course.
and the Cajun guy who
Jason
I can't remember
Wilson?
his name. Justin Wilson. Justin Wilson, right? And his onion and a pinch of this and pinch of that. That was it. Like, that's what you watched on TV.
So
for cooking.
comforting, though.
And I did watch all of that.
Same here.
Yeah. So, but it wasn't like I got into cooking because there was the potential of celebrity. I'll say that I've been chasing that dragon tail since food has become sort of a entertainment form, but it's not really been something that was the focus of why I got into cooking. I thought it was super creative. It was really hard, like working I ended up going back to the same restaurant I left to go work at the Marriott. I went back to the Manhattan Ocean Club several years later to work for a different chef there at that point, this English guy. And that was when I really sort of said, this is a creative art form. This is a way I can express myself creatively. I can, it is as passionate and as physical as any combat scene in any theatrical production anyone's ever, and more so.
Sure. Yeah.
There is a camaraderie, much like the theater, that you cannot deny in a kitchen. I mean, it is, again, especially at that time. So there are a lot of correlations I actually have never thought of until just now. Trish, thank you so much.
You're welcome. That's why I'm here. So when do you go, at this point in your life, are you thinking, I want to go to chef school?
So I'm now working for the chef in New York, and he is inspiring me to be better and do more. And I'm a line cook now for a number of years in a row, and I'm burned up my arms, and I'm really trying to find a way to do something more.
So you're doing it right.
Yeah, but I'm trying to find a way to excel, and I just couldn't get another job without having some kind of culinary training formally.
Okay.
Even though, because everything I'd gotten at that point had just been in the kitchen, and so he made the suggestion that I go to France, and he was going to be able to hook me up with, it's an apprenticeship, but in the culinary world we call those a stage. You're a stagiaire when you go to France to have an apprenticeship. So he was going to help me find a restaurant to have a stage in Paris, and he connected me with a restaurant not far from the Arc de Triomphe in the 13th arrondissement, called Le Petit Marguerite, and it's run by these three brothers, one guy up front and two brothers in the kitchen. It was like dueling pianos, right? These two stoves facing each other.
Ooh.
And it was tiny kitchen. Maybe I don't know if you can't see this room, but it's 10 by 10, basically. This little tiny kitchen, these two guys just facing each other, rattling off stuff all night long, and a couple of apprentices and like me, just scurrying around them trying to get it all done.
In French.
All in French, and I didn't speak a word of French.
Of course.
And it was amazing. Like, it was the most amazing experience. And, you think about family meal, and we would all sit down together and have a meal, and I was introduced to foods I'd never seen before, and ate my first pig's foot, which I loved at the time. Not something I eat regularly now, but something I remember fondly. And maybe it was just because I remember them all looking at me and me staring at the plate and them all laughing at me. But it was just one of those, again, it was an affirming experience that said, you're in the right place, doing the right thing.
That's amazing.
At the right time.
So, again, three brothers, so three sons.
Interesting. That's another correlation,
That's
yeah.
crazy, yeah. And then I was going somewhere with this. You're going to school at the same time you're doing this apprenticeship.
Well, I didn't plan to go to school.
Oh, you were just going to do the apprenticeship.
Right.
Okay. Also, before we go any further, I watch Chef's Table all the time, so I think I'm pretty much a chef.
Yes, of course.
Of course. Family meal. That's like the thing that essentially the kitchen does before you open or after?
Before.
Before. So everybody kind of like...
In between, sir. And it depends. Like, so in France, at the time when I was working in, this is now the late 80s, and I'm working in France, and you work all day. Like, you go in early in the morning, you get ready for lunch, you have lunch service, then family meal.
Gotcha.
Then you have dinner service, and then you go out to the bar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it. Yeah. So you weren't planning on going to school.
Correct.
How did that happen then?
I was at a hostel in Paris somewhere. It's a long time ago, 30 plus years ago. And there was a thing on a message board where they needed chef's assistants who could speak English.
Oh, okay.
And so I went down there, and it really was so I went to the Cordon Bleu in Paris, which was at the time it was the one and only. They hadn't expanded out and done all this licensing and everything else. Small little place, and then on Rue Lyon de l'Homme, I'll never forget it, and really cute. And I walked in and I said, I speak English, but not much French. And they said that didn't matter. because you just really kind of needed to be an interface between, the English-speaking students and the chefs.
Okay.
But not necessarily, and that there was a translator in most of the classes, but for whatever reason, I ended up being able to get this job as a chef's assistant, and I exchanged it for my schooling.
Fantastic.
And I ended up having to, pay some tuition, and it wasn't like a full free swap. But I didn't really go to France planning to go to Cordon Bleu. I really was going to go for 3 months, do this stage, go back to New York, have that on my resume as French experience, and be done. Because that was the gold standard at the time. I mean, 1987, 1988, I worked in France, in Paris, on your resume.
You're hired.
Yeah, you're hired. So that was really the plan. And I ended up went to school for about a 1.5-year program, and worked in Le Petit Marguerite, which was a 1-star Michelin restaurant, and ended up working at a couple of other much nicer restaurants. The most notable is a restaurant called Michel Rostin, which is a 2-star Michelin restaurant that has 2 restaurants in one. One a very upscale, high-end fine dining restaurant, and then this other cute little bistro, which is connected, and the kitchens kind of meet in the middle. The one thing I loved about that restaurant was that it was debilitatingly difficult when you worked in the fine dining part of the restaurant, and you had to be on pins and needles every second of every day. But 1 day a week, they put you in the bistro, so you got a break.
It's like a breath of fresh air.
You did. You got to go into the bistro, and you were alone, one-man kitchen by yourself, and you do about 60 or some covers a night. But it was like just the most simple, comforting, but deliciously amazing food.
Like
something I still love to make today is this gratin, but they refer to it. It's really macaroni and cheese, but it was a gratin de macaroni, right? And it was penne pasta with really delicious bacon and Gruyere cheese and lots of cream.
Ugh.
And it's
my heart just fluttered a bit.
Yeah.
This sounds so romantic.
It is romantic. These are romantic times. I mean, I just think about I'm 26 years old. I'm tooling around Paris on my mobilette, my moped, and to get to from where I lived to where I worked, I had to go right through the center of Paris, around the Arc. I mean, I was driving around the Arc de Triomphe on my moped to get to work every day. I would go early in the morning and work, and I would have a little break at lunchtime, and I'd go take a little nap on a park bench nearby and go back to work. And, I had no responsibilities other than going and working in the kitchen every day. And every day there was something to discover. Like, it never was a drudge at all, ever.
Flirting with Parisian women?
Yeah,
Yeah, Oh, we know, Eric.
I was working too much, to be honest. I
was going to ask.
I really
did
didn't.
You have time?
Not really, no. To be honest, I really didn't have a whole lot of social time until I left Paris and went and worked in the Touraine, Touraine region of France, which is more central, and I worked in a hotel there, where we still worked morning till night, but there was a group of us. We were more carousing, I would say. Because we were kind of cloistered in the country. We would go to the most nearby town and
Pirates of the kitchen.
Pirates, yes, indeed.
Yeah.
That's a really good way of describing it.
Yes. Okay. How long were you in France?
Just about 5 years altogether.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you ended up speaking French.
Yeah.
Very much. So are you fluent still?
Well, I left France, it's 30 years ago, so
Right.
I'm going to go no.
Okay.
But
Your accent's lovely.
I'll tell you a funny story about that. But if I were to get into a French conversation now, I would stumble a lot. But if I did it regularly, I'm pretty sure I could pick up.
Yeah, it would come back.
I'd pick it back up. Because I was French speaking. I was living a life in French, and that was also a gift. That was really, really cool. But another job that I had was while I was going to school, before I ended up going out to the Loire Valley, I was working 2 summers. I worked at a private chateau for the Count and Countess de Rohan-Chabot. And these were these two bohemian. He was an antique dealer and she was an artist. And they were Count and Countess in title only. They were really like you and me. They were just the most down-to-earth, coolest people. And my buddy Bruce and I had, I don't even remember how we got, I think school must have hooked us up with it somehow. But we ended up going and working for them at their private chateau in Auvergne, which is where all the best blue cheese comes from. And so here's another Three Brothers story. Down the road from the chateau was this little dairy farm run by three brothers.
That is a theme in your life.
It is. And we used to go down there every morning and get fresh milk, still warm, in the metal can, and we'd schlep it back up to the house.
Crazy.
And we had a garden that was over an acre that was tended by the groundskeepers of the chateau. It had every vegetable, berry, fruit you could imagine. It was a young cook's dream, and we didn't have any responsibilities during the week because they were never there. They would only come up on the weekends. And so during the week, like their sons would be there every once in a while, or somebody would be visiting. And on the weekends, the place would fill up with, about 20 different guests that would stay at the chateau. And we would cook all weekend like maniacs. But we would go out in the morning and have our espresso and pick from the garden. It was just...
That just sounds stupid.
An amazing time.
It just sounds dumb.
So where was I going with this?
Well,
I got lost.
Well, that story would be even better if you said the garden was tended by like Buddhist monks or something. That would have made that story really good. I was talking about your accent.
Oh, right. So when I was in Auvergne, so there were quite a few upscale visitors, even though they themselves were very down to earth. And I'm not to name drop, and not that you guys would know these names anyway.
Drop.
But like François Dahl, who is the founder of Nestle and L'Oreal, he was one of their regular guests. The former president of France, Valéry Giscard d'Estaing, was one of their regular guests. So these were the kind of people that they were rubbing elbows with, but those were the kind of folks we were cooking for over the weekends. But I remember talking to somebody, one of the guests that had come up from the week, on a weekend, and we were having a conversation full on, in French, and just out of the blue, and I don't remember who this person was, but what they said stuck with me, because he said, you speak very well, but you can tell that you learned all of your French in Paris. And at that moment, it dawned on me that I was speaking French like with a Brooklyn accent. You know what I mean?
Awesome.
That, so you think about that Canarsie or that, hey, you guys, kind of Brooklyn thing. And it never occurred to me. I thought I had this wonderful accent and it was all coming out so perfectly. But no, I was talking like, a kid from Canarsie. And
that's pretty classic.
Yeah, it was
actually.
good.
So you're in France for 5 years, just living the good life. Do you look back on that and just go, I almost can't believe that happened to me?
Yeah.
It just sounds dumb. It sounds crazy.
Yeah, it was long enough ago that it really does feel like a dream sometimes.
Ugh, it sounds so romantic. When do you decide to come home, and why? Why do you come home?
My mother was at the end of her life, and I had every intention of coming home to see her, and go back, and never return. Honestly, that was really my plan.
You fell in love with?
And I was really actually going to go from France to Japan. That was my plan.
Wow.
I met a lot of really cool Japanese people in France, and at the time, French cooking in Japan was like
huge.
Yeah, forget about it.
Right.
It was like if you wanted to be a French chef, you really needed to go to Japan. It would not even be in France anymore. If you were going to take it to the next level, and so that was really my plan. But I came home, and my mother passed, and my father got sick, and one thing leads to another.
And you were here.
And I was here. Yeah.
So
I was in New York. Anyway.
In New York. When do you meet your wife?
When I moved to Seattle.
Okay, so let's then back up. How long are you in New York after both of your parents pass away?
Right after my father died, I moved to Seattle.
Why?
I had friends that moved that I kind of grew up with. And when I say grew up, I mean we spent our early 20s together. Folks that I met when we opened the Marriott. And talk about pirates of the kitchen. I mean, we were pirates of the city. We were 20-somethings with our pockets bulging with money in the early 80s. And it was just,
You were making it rain.
oh God, it was these, talk about a dream or a haze. It was really, these were incredible times. I mean, we had a lot of free time. We worked at night. You know, we would go to restaurants when they weren't busy because we were working busy nights. So we would go, we'd go to the best restaurants and spend all of our money, and we'd buy nice clothes and get all dressed up. And it was just really, that was really when I solidified this sort of, you know, restaurants are life. Like where you go, what you do in a restaurant, how you eat, and how you sort of go through that experience is what I want to always be involved in that.
I pride myself on being a good orderer of the menu. That's if we ever go out with friends, usually my husband's sweet enough to just say, hey, let Trish do it. I love it, and I'm good at it, and I agree with you. I think restaurants and food are life. I really do.
And at that time, we were just, you know, we were living high on the hog.
Awesome.
So, you know, that was what we were, you know, that was my sort of, that's where life was, and that's all that really mattered to me at the time. What were we talking about, Trish?
You moved to Seattle.
I moved to Seattle, right?
With these other
people, right?
These pirates.
With my other pirates. So they moved to Seattle a couple years before because I had a friend that always wanted to be a winemaker.
Ooh.
And so Washington, again, burgeoning kind of wine culture growing there at the time, and he went and worked at a couple of big name wineries, and then got into wine sales. And I needed something different. I had just lost my parents. My brothers and I were kind of butting heads, and I was just like, you know, let's put some distance between that life and my new life. And I had inherited a little bit of money. You know, my father had some life insurance, so I had a little bit of money, and I went to Seattle really to look to open a restaurant with this buddy of mine.
Okay.
And that's what we did.
You did.
So I went to Seattle. It was literally a couple months after my father passed, and the plan was to find a little space somewhere in downtown Seattle and just kind of open a little neighborhood bistro and call it good. And somehow I ended up connected to a realtor who knew a French chef it wasn't advertised or known to anyone, but he wanted to sell his restaurant. And I didn't know anything about this guy because I was new to the area, but you know, little did I know he was the quintessential chef, had been the most famous chef in the area since 1971. You know, it was like, and he was selling his world-renowned Gerard's Relais de Lyon in Bothell, which was just outside of Seattle.
Wow.
So I went up there to look at it, and I was immediately transported back to France. It was a little house. It was so cute, and it was so perfect. And then you walk through these doors into the kitchen, and behind this little house is a building bigger than the house that's all kitchen.
Oh.
It was like every chef's dream, and that's what he did. He built his dream kitchen, and copper pots lining the walls, the multiple, island-type stations with chefs all around, and I immediately was like, "This is it. Like, this is it. We're going to do this." And so we worked out some terms, and I bought the restaurant from Gerard.
Wow.
And he ended up hanging out with us for a little while, and he would greet customers at the door for a while, and he really helped us transition. He introduced us to a guy named John Hinterberger, who was the big-time restaurant critic in the Seattle Times during that period, and who ended up being very. I don't know if it was. I want to say it was well deserved, but he was also very generous and really gave us some great reviews. Ended up with 3.5 stars in the Seattle Times, and it was again another magical time where I was just. It had taken everything that I had done to that point, and I got to do it whatever I wanted. Like I didn't have to do anything anybody else said. I could do only the things that I wanted to.
That feels good, doesn't it?
Yeah, if I have any regrets, it would be if I have a single regret in my life, it's that we sold the restaurant because there was a level of freedom there that I have never experienced before and never experienced since.
Did the former owner work with you in the kitchen at all, ever?
No,
No.
not really.
Just
and I didn't feel like I needed him to. It's it's interesting because when I first bought the restaurant, it was very important to him that we close the deal before October because he knew he made like 40% of his money through the holidays. So if you look at through, Christmas and New Year's and Valentine's Day, kind of, that was like his sweet spot because it was a very romantic, beautiful little place. And he had a whole team of people that worked there. He had a chef de cuisine that ran the kitchen, really, and he was more of a figurehead. He had kind of retired at that point anyway. Right after it kind of got out that the restaurant had been sold to this kid from New York, the internet was brand new at the time, and there was a chat room. You remember those?
Oh, gosh.
There was a chat room called Seattle Eats. And within days, the buzz on Seattle Eats was, oh my gosh, don't go to Gerard's. They've destroyed it. What is this kid who wants to go eat, French food from some kid from New York?
So the internet was nasty back then, too.
It started with trolls. That's the whole reason it became even a thing. And but the really funny thing was they dissed everything. It was like they're using the china's mismatched, and they served me the wrong silverware with this thing, and they gave me the wrong wine glass for my Bordeaux, and the sauce was broken, and I was doing nothing but signing checks at that point. It was all the same crew. It was all the same
Interesting.
recipes. It was all still Gerard. It was everything about the restaurant was exactly the same. I hadn't touched a thing, and I hadn't planned to until all the holidays were over because we had all these reservations and people were coming for what they expected.
For what, yes.
Right. And, well, that hurt Gerard's feelings, as one can imagine.
Of course it did.
Because he was like,
This
what
is
are you
his
talking
life.
about? I know he didn't do anything. This is all still what we were. So I think that's kind of why he reached out to the community. But it turned out in the end to be a really positive experience. After that, we got a lot of great press, and I believe on our own merits, achieved a lot of really great accolades from every outlet, that was available at the time.
What were some of your favorite things you were cooking in this time? Was it French food at this restaurant?
It was. It was
Okay.
from my perspective, a modern twist.
Approachable? Or no?
Well, it was still a very expensive price fixed menu, and so it was intended to wow. That was really the intent. So at that time, we had a lot of things on the menu that were traditionally French. But I'd say two of the things that I remember really well, three, that were like our best sellers at that time were, I did a cold lobster consommé that had a smoked tomato kind of salad in it. So there was and then beautiful chunks of lobster, and it was all garnished with an herb salad, and it was really a beautiful tableau, when you looked at it. And the consommé itself, because it was chilled, had a slight gel to it. So I know that probably doesn't sound good, but it has
Sounds good to me.
It has a texture that it allows you to sort of.
It melts?
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't call it molecular gastronomy, but if you think about what people have done with foams and things that make like huge amounts of flavor in a very sort of dissipating kind of experience, it was a lot like that. And then you had the earthiness of these tomatoes that had been smoked with herbs de Provence. And so that was it was a real triumph. And I remember that one particularly well because I loved eating it as much as I loved making it, because it was so technical.
That's always a good sign, right?
Yeah, it was very technical, and it was really delicious to eat. But I also remember one night having Gerard in the restaurant as a guest. And I came to the table when he finished eating that, and he just looked at me. There was an awe. Like, he pointed and he just said, Eric, this, and he had no words, like this, and I just, and again, this is a very long time ago, and that stays with me, because here is someone who I know is just, who devoted his entire life, a guy who trained as a young man with, Paul Bocuse. I still have Paul Bocuse's phone number in a Rolodex, just because I have it. Like, I've never called or would never call, or, well, he's dead now, but. There's this.
You can't get rid of that.
No, it's like it's a relic. It's a thing that I'll I'll cherish forever, because I got it from Gerard. He's like, if you ever need to call Paul, just like yeah, I'm going to call Paul Bocuse. But so there was that. There was nobody serves veal anymore, but we did a veal chop that was as thick as. I don't know, what is that for? This is I guess there's a video here, but it's a very thick, on the bone. At the time, that was
like
a very
like this.
Yeah, it was really this veal chop in just a beautiful array of wild mushrooms that we got, from people foraging. So it was, it was not like rehydrated dried mushrooms or a powder or a mix. I mean, it was
real
like,
deal.
It was just, and it was more about the mushrooms than the veal. But there's something about cooking a hunk of meat like that perfectly, and then putting it in a simple sauce that, and an accompaniment that just every bite just is just a delight. And that was something diners really, really loved. And then the other thing that I always really loved was a black cod. We had a black cod that I just simply seared in a pan, but we served it in a beurre blanc of. Actually, you know what? That's where the smoked tomatoes were. The smoked tomatoes were in the beurre blanc for my black cod. The lobster consommé just had a little tomato salad with the lobster, and that's
gotcha.
What it was. And there's just that smokiness of the tomatoes and the herbs in this delicate sort of. It wasn't so there's two types of classic butter sauces. One is called a beurre blanc, which is where you make white wine, right? And you know what else? I'm gonna test you now.
Beurre blanc, yes, I do. It's like, is it lemon or that's more?
No, but they're shallots. So you basically reduce.
Oh, okay.
You reduce tarragon and shallots and white wine into sort of like a dry sort of.
And then you just add butter.
And then you add butter
until it gets to this consistency that you want.
Right, exactly. So that's one. The other is called a beurre monté, which is essentially just, you can use wine. A lot of people just use water and seasoned water, or a vegetable stock or something like that, or any kind of fish fumé, and that's what we use. So a fish fumé is like a fish stock, a very light kind of fish stock, and you basically just heat that, and then you just start whisking butter into it, and until you have this just light, fluffy. So that's what it was. It was a smoked tomato beurre monté, which went over this perfectly seared black cod. And so black cod is also known as sable fish, and if you've ever had that, it's like the fish itself is like eating butter almost. It's so unctuous and phenomenal. So those were, I think, three of my favorite dishes from the restaurant.
Fantastic. Thank you for that.
You're welcome. I'm going to just go on one more sort of voyage into the restaurant. So because it was such a fancy restaurant, I was always reminiscent of my experience at Michel Rostand, where we had the beautiful, priced fix, expensive, haute cuisine restaurant on one side, and the bistro.
Little bistro.
And their restaurant was called the Bistro d'à côté, the bistro next door. And so I said, I want a bistro next door. And the house was broken up into two halves. So I made a bistro next door.
Awesome.
And what's funny, not funny, is we ended up cannibalizing our own business. So people would come for their anniversary or special event or prom or whatever, and they would see my $110 price fix menu. And then they would see over here roast chicken for $10. And they were like, can we go over there? And so we ended up and after a short time, we ended up closing the dining room, made it into a bar and lounge, and just kept the bistro open. And that was like the most amazing roast chicken, the most amazing cassoulet, the most amazing bouillabaisse, the most amazing duck confit, the most amazing, saucisson d'ail, the garlic sausage with potatoes. I mean, just delicious. The food that French bistro
Comfort food.
Oh yeah, unbelievable. So that was, and that's where I truly found my joy, was in that restaurant. The
It's
bistro.
fun.
Yeah.
And there's, like you said earlier, there's not that tension of maybe the plates have to be perfect. They just have to.
When you walk over to a table with an enamel pot with enough cassoulet, for those of you who may not know, is a white bean stew, and it's got confit duck, it's got sausages, it has all kinds of delicious cured meats and tomato and
It's
herbs.
November food. I call that November food.
It's definitely November food, and it cooks on the back of the stove. If you do it traditionally, a French traditional stove is a big giant metal plate, and you kind of just move pots around. So this would sit on the back of the stove, and it just simmers. And there is people think you put breadcrumbs on it, but you don't. There's a crust that develops on the top, and you just kind of keep feeding the crust from the stuff that bubbles around the outside. And as it just develops this unbelievable caramelized, crusty top. When you drop that thing in the middle of a table for 4 people to dig into, there's there's usually a gasp like, wow, and that was the kind of reaction. And we did everything that way. Everything was in a big sort of serving vessel, and people it was about community and communal eating and eating together and sharing and laughing. And we had a wine list that had 20 wines on it that were all under $10. So the goal was really to come in, enjoy a bottle of wine, enjoy this, several bottles of wine, enjoy, and enjoy a big pot of food together. It was really, those were great times.
That gasp, that, oh my gosh, this is the best roast chicken I've ever had. That, as a chef and as cooks, that's the applause we get on stage. That is our, oh my gosh, this was an amazing performance you just gave me. There's nothing better to me than when I cook for someone and they just go, this is so good. That does it for me.
One of my joys right now at the Manor is I have the pleasure of fielding all of the feedback from our residents, and there's 1,000 of them. When I first took the job, I thought for sure my days would be spent fielding complaints and figuring out how to make people happy when they're in an impossibly unhappy situation. Like, that's truly what I believe that I was going to experience.
When did you take this job? Because you're fairly new.
October of 17, so not even 2 years.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And but that's not it. I mean, I'm very communicative, and I try to be very responsive, and I have a lot of great relationships with residents now that I'm continuing to develop with new residents, and people really love what we do, and they so appreciate not having to cook, not having to clean, not having to shop. And I would say, what I would call constructive feedback. Not even, on some occasions we get complaints, but it's generally something like really mundane, like, I don't like your clam chowder, like something like that, versus, when we get a lot of constructive feedback, like, I really love this, and this, it would be really cool if you could add that, or do this, or do that. And that, it's really a blessing, man. Everybody has been incredible with sharing what their needs and their wants are, and being patient for it to show up. So
beautiful.
Not what you'd expect, really.
So let's back up a little bit. You met your wife in Seattle?
Oh, yeah. Wow. We've missed a whole chapter, Trish.
Sorry, honey. We
That's okay.
We missed your sweetie pie.
That's because we were talking about me.
Typical.
Typical is right.
So where'd you meet her?
I met her in my restaurant, actually.
Was she a server?
No, but her friend was.
Okay.
So, she was a server, but in a different restaurant.
Okay.
So she worked at a restaurant called the Foghorn, which is on Lake Washington in Kirkland, Washington. And her friend worked for me and there as well. And we had just started doing Sunday brunch, and this friend of ours asked if she could bring some girlfriends in for brunch.
Okay.
Sure. We weren't really doing a lot of brunch, so I was like, sure, any way to get the word out would be good. So she comes in with 3 friends, I want to say, maybe 2. Might have been my wife and one other. And so the restaurant was, again, this is actually prior to the bistro and all of that. This is really when we were still fine dining. And the restaurant was like these little rooms in a house around a courtyard, a little outside courtyard. And so the girls ate brunch, and I came out and said hi. And I then said, okay, well, nice to meet you all. I'm going to go let the dogs out. I had 2 little pugs, Nathan and Fanny. And so I went and let the pugs out in the courtyard, and they opened the door to the courtyard, and Lisa, my wife, says, my dog's in the car. Would it be okay if I brought my dog in? Of course, bring the dog in.
Right.
She has a pug.
Shut up.
Yeah. So she brings the pug in, and the 3 pugs are, it's a puggle, and they're scurrying around, and it's like, oh my God, this is so cute. And she's adorable. My wife Lisa is adorable. And
you're a rock star because you're the chef.
Whatever. And I then just say to our friend, hey, your friend's kind of cute. And it was immediately, you want her number? And that right then I knew I've been set up.
This was a setup.
I've been set up. And, well, long story short, we'll be married 20 years in August. Mm-hmm. So, we dated like people do. And our dogs, we kind of created this trio of pugs, which we got known for everywhere we went. And then we met, when we were walking down, I hate to say that we got a dog from a pet store, but we did. We were walking down the main street in the town that the restaurant was in, and there was a cute little red pug. We had never seen a pug that color before, and like, oh, she's so cute. We really need one together. And
of course, you need a child together.
So right. So then we had 4 pugs.
Oh my goodness.
And then one day, on a wild hare, I got access to a cute little black pug puppy, and I'm like, well, we don't have a black one, so I'm the numbskull who brought the 5th dog home. And at one point we had 5 pugs, and before we had any actual kids without fur, and so we were known as the crazy restaurant couple with the 5 pugs. And I can say this now because I don't own the restaurant anymore, but the pugs were always there at the restaurant. Usually in my office in a big pile in my
of pugs.
But we had these 5 milk crates set up in the kitchen, Trish.
Uh-oh.
With pillows
Call
on
the
them.
health inspector.
And the kitchen, remember the kitchen was like a giant house in and of itself. So it was very far away from where we actually did the prep. It was more kind of in the service lane of anyway, I won't justify it, but we had the dogs in the kitchen.
And everyone's fine. People ate there and everyone's fine.
Well, like in France, people are eating with their dogs in the restaurant. So, and nobody cared.
That's where I want to be.
All of our employees, love them, and even customers that came in the kitchen always saw the dogs, and that was like one of the highlights,
Of course.
So Lisa basically left working where she was and came and worked with me, and she was the hostess and worked the front of the house, and did our wine purchasing and that kind of thing. We were living that dream, a couple running our business together, and it was really great.
How did the Rogue Valley Manor job pop into your life?
Well, we'll fast forward through a long chapter of 14 years of working in healthcare. So let's just say really quickly, the restaurant business, as much as I talk about it romantically and poetically now, is hard.
It's brutal.
Yeah. And for me, the only hard thing was I was responsible for people's payroll, and I was responsible for paying my vendors, and when you're in business, what you don't know unless you're like a real swashbuckling entrepreneur is you always owe people money. Like that's kind of the nature of being in business.
Yeah.
And I wasn't comfortable with that. Like I wasn't comfortable always knowing that I owed people money. And that it wasn't for being, we were successful, things were going well, but it was still hand to mouth. We were still trying to like, okay, are we going to open another location? Are we going to try to expand in a way that really makes us super viable? Are we just going to grind every day ourselves?
Yeah.
It would be nice to have someone else pay for health insurance now that we want to have a family. It would be, all of that stuff. And I probably wouldn't have sold the restaurant, but it was another one of those twists of fate. A stranger walked into the restaurant one day and basically wanted to be my partner to help me like spruce it up and make it more modern. And I wasn't interested in that, so he offered to buy the restaurant outright and employ Lisa and I. So that's kind of what we did first. He turned out to be a complete numbskull, and we ended up leaving that situation. But that was how the restaurant.
But your responsibility was out at that point,
right? And we were actually making more money, taking home more money than we were as
Yeah.
owning it. So it was good for a short period of time, and then it got ugly, and we dissolved that relationship, and off we
Kinda
went.
sad.
But so I got a job, and then I went looking for jobs, and I got a job working in a country club for a while, which was fine. And then but my entrepreneurial spirit was kind of growing in me again, and I had a couple of opportunities to leave the country club and consult in a restaurant. And then there's a chocolatier in Seattle called Dilettante, which you may have heard of. And they make truffles and all kinds of delicious chocolates and cakes and whatnot. And they were looking to expand out a brand of, as Starbucks was really blowing up,
Right.
they were trying to expand out into what they were calling the Mocha Cafe, and it was their version of Starbucks. And these were, restaurants with grab-and-go food and so on. And so they hired me to sort of develop that menu line for them and work with growing that business. And I was excited about that. But again, best laid plans and promises, that didn't really work out. And I was really looking for anything to get out of that relationship, because they had a store on Capitol Hill in Seattle that, in addition to all of my other duties, I ended up managing, and I was literally working 18, 19 hours a day.
Wow.
So because they were open till 4 a.m. serving desserts. So I had to get out of there. And so here I'm, yes, I was looking in the paper, ladies and gentlemen. This is you still look for jobs in the newspaper at that time. I saw a job, executive chef for a hospital, Swedish hospital in Seattle. And I'm like, I can make meatloaf and mashed potatoes for a little while till I figure out what the next thing is. I'll get good benefits, all this.
Okay.
And frankly, I was already aware of Swedish's reputation for excellent food, because they were pioneers in the concept of room service in a hospital. So rather than just everybody gets a tray, this is where you call down, you order what you want when you want it.
Okay.
And I'm like, and I had actually been a patient there. I'd had back surgery a couple of years earlier, and I had experienced it for myself. So I'm like, okay, I can actually make this work for a little while. 14 years later.
Wow.
After a very illustrious career, I really never dreamed in a million years that healthcare would be my path. But I found a community there that was incredibly innovative and supportive, and really wanting to raise the bar of what people experience when they're at their most vulnerable.
For sure.
The only thing they have control over is food, and this is an opportunity to really help people not only heal nutritively and sort of with nutrition and calories and the stuff that they need to heal, but also heal emotionally when they're in a hard spot, or even full of joy, like having just had a baby. A woman who's been in labor for 36 hours and hasn't eaten anything, and now wants a milkshake and a burger, and whatever the experience is for those folks, or someone who is on cancer meds and just can't eat anything because nothing tastes good, and you work with them directly to find something that they can actually get some calories in, so that they can feel better.
And you make them that one thing that they can actually eat.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
a score.
So I really, lucky for me, when I got that job, they weren't looking for someone who had all of the technical experience you need to work in a hospital or in an environment that large, because that's not the experience I had. I was just someone with a culinary point of view, and who liked to cook and was a good cook. And that was, I had a mentor, the woman who hired me, fantastic human, Chris Schroeder, who basically said, we're going to take a risk, we're going to do this, and we're going to really raise the bar with what we do for our patients. And so I spent 14 years working with her and another incredible director after Chris retired, Candace Johnson, who, it's all been about making sure we're doing the best that we can and being innovative at the same time. And then a big part of that is also feeding the people who take care of the patients, right? So the bulk of the work that we did is in our retail-facing side, our hospital cafeterias. And, you're feeding thousands of people a day who have a short break and they need good food and they need to get back to work quickly, and they really rely on you to keep them sustained throughout the day and without having to leave. And you have a captive audience, and if you're not keeping it new and fresh and innovative, then it's no longer interesting, and it's no longer doing for them what it needs to do. So I did that for many years, and then when the ADA, or Obamacare, not ADA, the
Affordable Care Act.
ACA, right? Thank you. Obamacare came into play. Reimbursements changed, and funding for hospitals changed, and long story short, which it's already a long story, sorry. Services started getting cut, and we were not really given the resources we needed to sort of deliver on the promises we were trying to make and the things that we were trying to innovate. And I was losing steam in that acute care environment.
Yeah, of course.
And
did you start looking?
my phone rang.
Oh.
Well, I did start looking, actually. So the organization I work for laid off a bunch of management level people at my level, laid off 200 managers in a massive layoff. So I was worried at the time and started sort of poking around. And that's when I met someone who works at Pacific Retirement Services, the company that owns the manor, for a job in Seattle, where they were looking for a director of dining services for their Mirabella, Seattle location.
Okay.
And at the time, it didn't work out. Like, it just wasn't a right fit at the time. The executive director wasn't ready to take the jump. I needed more than I think that they were ready to dole out. And it just wasn't going to happen at that point. So like 2 years later, my phone rang. Mm-hmm. It was the same person I had met 2 years earlier, who I had interviewed with, and said, I have an opportunity. I'm confident we can meet all of your needs, but there's a catch. It's in Medford, Oregon.
Did you go, where's that?
I absolutely said, where is that? I'm like, oh, Oregon, that's not too far.
It's right below you.
Yeah, but all the way at the other end of the state, basically California. So,
how dare you?
How dare I? And I, it was one of those things where, Lisa and I had to look at each other and go, well, I was really unhappy at work. I was not feeling like I had anywhere to go. Like there was no growth. There was nothing that was I was going to always be there doing that job. I certainly wasn't going to be able to necessarily get another job in the region, supporting us in the way that we wanted to be supported.
For sure.
And life in Seattle had become unmanageable in terms of cost. Like, just everything was incredibly expensive. Traffic had gotten out of control. And although we had a very wonderful, close-knit group of friends, we felt like life was we were just sort of going through the motions.
So maybe ready for a change then.
And that's kind of how, and that's exactly how we ended up.
Okay.
Down here.
Well, welcome to Southern Oregon.
Thank you.
And you're doing wonderful things at the Rogue Valley Manor. We talked specifically about, there's this idea of like what goes on up there, what is happening, and you said it's not this like nursing home vision that a lot of people have. It's a community, and you guys are feeding this community.
It is 100% a community. I would say, to say I think I mentioned it when we were taping for West Coast Flavors that it's resort living, and I don't want to overstate that. It's not like everybody's got their tennis sweater around their neck and
sure.
But it is definitely a community where people rely on each other. It's a sense of community, and the majority of the communal experience is around food. Mm-hmm. there are other activities that happen in pockets. There's lots of wellness activities, and there's a gym and a pool, and there's all kinds of exercise classes, and there's lawn bowling, and we have 2 golf courses. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff, and it really truly is a amazing place. But there are also a lot of very senior people that live there. So there's an element when you're walking around that you are in a place where
people have come to end their life. It's the end of life.
It is certainly the twilight of their lives, and nobody makes any bones about that.
Right.
I've talked to many people who say, "Yeah, this is the last place we'll ever live," and they're very clear about that.
Right.
And the cool thing about the manor, which, I mean, this might be an opportunity to educate, is it is what's referred to as a continuing care retirement community, so a CCRC, and those are also being rephrased now as life plan communities. And essentially what this is you come in as an independent, reasonably healthy person, somewhere in your late 60s, early 70s, and you live out the rest of your life. And in one place is access to all of the health care, for the most part, that you'll ever need. And we will care for you in your independent, vital life and give you all the access to all the things that you want in that aspect of your life. And we will also be there for you at the end of your life when you need that type of care and everything in between. So that is the appeal to people who live there.
Yeah, sign me up.
Yeah, I mean, really, I can't think of a better way to really
I agree.
Live out that last chapter of your life.
So we're getting to the end. We have to wrap up a little bit.
We're wrapping, okay.
Although I feel like we could just chat forever.
We could.
Eric, I'm going to say this about you. I feel like there are people in this world, you probably have some in your circle, that are so charismatic and so just fun. You're drawn to them. You want to be around them. You are that in my book.
Thanks.
You have buttloads of charisma.
I'd say the same thing about you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. That's because we're
that's
babies.
That's why you're on TV.
Only when they allow me to.
And that's why they felt confident enough to put me in front of 1,000 people who, if they wanted to, could really make everybody's life miserable.
Right.
I'd say, if nothing else, my greatest success right now, I would say at the Manor, is my ability to communicate with residents in a way that makes them feel connected to.
Perfect.
Yeah.
I think that's what most people are looking for in life, just to be heard and to be connected. So we are going to wrap up a little bit, get to the final 3. But first, you, meaning your chefs at the Rogue Valley Manor, have said, yep, we're doing it. Oregon Wine Experience coming up in a few weeks. We're all going to meet under the big white tent. Medal celebration. This is the night where
That's our night, Trish.
Yes. We give out awards to those winemakers who have won something from the Oregon Wine Competition that was just recently held. And you guys have said, yeah, we'll feed everybody and feed us fancy stuff. Real fancy. Why did you decide to go all in? Because no other culinary partner is coming in on Medal Celebration night. It is just the chefs from Rogue Valley Manor.
Well, I could come up with some really great story about why we've chosen to go all in. I'll just call it naivete because of my newness to the area and not really knowing the event, to be honest. It was an opportunity to work with Asante, but I didn't think of any other. When I thought of we could do this or we could do that, it never really crossed my mind to we could participate in this way or that way. I just said, you're looking for people to cook that night? We'll do it.
Let's just do it.
We cook for 1,000 people. We make a few thousand meals a day, every day anyway.
This is chump change.
And, well, not really that. But honestly, for me, and I really want people to recognize Rogue Valley Manor as a highlight of this region. So I want when people who live here, certainly, when they look up at those buildings on the hill, which we can all admit are not that beautiful, they don't go, is that a psychiatric hospital, or is that the VA? I want them to unmistakably know what's going on up there. And part of doing that is community outreach, not just within our community, but outside of our community. And I just want an understanding of what a great place it is to live, we have a goal to be the employer of choice in Medford, and not just in the culinary arts, although I certainly want anyone who works in the culinary arts to want to work with us because, unlike an independent restaurant or a chain restaurant or something of that nature where you're doing the same thing over and over again, we do every kind of cuisine, every type of event from, barbecue to fine dining. We run the gamut on a daily basis. As a young culinarian, I mean, you have access to a variety of culinary technique and different types of foods and different type of cuisines that you would never have working in a single restaurant. So it's really a great opportunity to get out there. So that was really my underlying motive was that I wanted to be more recognized by people in our community.
And what better way to get some recognition than through people's stomachs?
Right.
That's
and
how
of
you
course,
win it with me.
Let's also not forget, it is for the Children's Miracle Network, and we're
It
supporting Asante and all of their great work. So I certainly don't want to underscore that, but selfishly, it's about recognition.
Well, I can't wait to see you on Thursday. I'll definitely be there for Medal Celebration Night. And if you do want some more information about the Oregon Wine Experience, all you have to do is go to OregonWineExperience.com. You can find all you need to know there. You can also get tickets and then come see the amazing chefs on Thursday night.
We'll all be there.
I'm so excited. I'm so excited. Okay, final three, Mr. Best advice you've ever been given.
The best advice I'd ever been given. I labored over this one because there was a couple. So Gerard, the guy I bought the restaurant from, the restaurant was right next to a produce stand on the road. And I remember when I bought the restaurant, I said, "Oh, this is so great! I'm going to have like all this fresh produce right next door." And his advice to me was, "You don't go in. All that crap on the outside of the building they're about to put in the dumpster, go make them a deal on that. So buy crap and turn it into gold." Those are his exact words. And I said, "Okay, thank you for that advice." So, on the one hand, it's funny, but there was an element to that. I mean, there was perfectly good produce I could turn into some really beautiful stuff.
That you did turn into beautiful stuff.
With the right technique.
Yeah.
And I always felt a little bit, like this is great. That was great advice from Gerard. But really, the best advice I ever got was from my mother, and I know it was really good advice because I've heard it many, many times since as a professional, going through all kinds of leadership development and all kinds of. So it was really interesting. The first time I heard it, I was sitting in some kind of leadership development class at my previous job, and I'm like, my mother told me that when I was, in college, and I was very frustrated about something that I was frustrated about. And it had to do with someone else's behavior. Somebody had done something and was behaving in a way that made me uncomfortable and made me angry. And she said, "You cannot control how other people act. You can't control what they do. You can't control how they make you feel. Only you can control that."
Yes.
And I have really, really tried to live my life that way. Not that I haven't had an outburst or two since then, but I really have. That has really been my mantra, is that I cannot control what happens around me. I can only control how I react to it.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
Thanks for that one, Mom. So this is kind of an interesting question because you sort of just got here. But looking at Southern Oregon, that you've been here for this long, if you ever left, what would bring you back here? What would you miss?
The smoke, totally.
Aw, the smoke. That makes me so sad.
Well, it is sad.
It is.
Because, as you stated, I've only been here a short time. I honestly do not have anything yet. I mean, there's more stuff I have outside of Medford that I want to seek out, that I miss, than I have here that I would miss. But something I have taken up that was that I had not taken up before is golf.
Okay.
And I have great access to golf because of where I work.
Yes, you do.
So I would come back for the golf.
We have a lot of nice golf courses here.
Yeah, the golf here is great. And I'm not good at it, but I really do love it. I love being out there. And, it's true what they say about golf. You just need one good golf shot in a round. It just keeps drawing you back. But
Beautiful.
that would be my thing right now.
Okay, right now. Well, I'll check back in with you in maybe a couple of years.
Yeah, I'm sure I'll have something else by then.
Let's hope so. Final meal, final drink. What would that look like, sir?
So I really thought long and hard about this because there's all kinds of childhood and emotional kind of food that I learned how to cook and food that I ate along the way in my life. But there is one food, when eaten with reckless abandon, is so satisfying. And if you have never done it, if you've never had it, and you've never experienced this, you're not going to know what I'm talking about. But when I was a young person in my 20s in New York in the 80s with more money to burn than we knew what to do with, we would go, us very cosmopolitan 20-somethings, to a place called Petrosian, which is a very, very fancy Russian vodka and caviar champagne place. All they sell is caviar. And we would get a big giant bowl of caviar and we would, savor it. But, it was enough to where, you get a big mouthful of really, and I'm talking about the really, really good stuff, the stuff that is ridiculously expensive, not stuff that you can probably just get your hands on at the supermarket or whatever. There is a sense of opulence and freedom and enjoyment that comes out of just recklessly eating this expensive food that is without compare. And so when Lisa and I got married, that was one of the things we did, is we put out these giant tins of expensive caviar. And I did the same thing. So the last time I did this was on my wedding day, which was going to be 20 years ago. Hey, I think I just had an idea for my 20th anniversary.
I was just going to say, write that down.
So I would say that a really, really excellent champagne with an unlimited, because now we're talking about my last meal, so I'm on my deathbed, right? I don't have to worry about nutrients.
Nothing. You can worry about nothing.
I'm going to die after I eat this. I just want to fill my mouth and belly with unbelievably excellent caviar and like a bottle of Cristal. That would probably be my. And I know that sounds so cliche and so opulent, but it truly is like so liberating to just with reckless abandon enjoy
caviar.
Two of the finest quality items on earth to eat.
So caviar, just help me here, because like caviar, like with a spoon, like just.
Yeah, I could eat it with a spoon. I totally could. Now, most people, put some egg, put it on a toast point, maybe a little chopped egg or some onion or whatever. But I'm telling you, Trish, you go into the thing with a mother of pearl spoon.
Grab that bottle and just glug.
I'm hearing myself say all this, and I'm like, people are like, who is this guy? What kind of numbskull? What a fancy pants guy. Fancy pants New York guy. I'm telling you, I like top ramen just as much, by the way. But it's like there is not just as much, but I will tell you, if you've never done it and you have the opportunity, I strongly suggest
do it. Yeah. Also, it's your last day, so screw what everybody else thinks.
Exactly. You're true that. I don't care about.
No.
That's right. My last day on earth, I'm gonna
do it.
I'm gonna relive my opulent youth and gorge myself on caviar.
Dr. Eric Eisenberg, you've been so fun. Thanks for doing this with me.
Thanks, Trish. Thanks for letting me go on and on about myself. It's really my favorite subject.
Okay, well, it's now my favorite subject. If you're listening to this podcast on iTunes and you like it, please subscribe, rate, and review. You can also hear us on Google Play, Stitcher, and SoundCloud. Check out the video portion at ktvl.com. Just click on features and then off script. One more time, the Director of Dining Services at Rogue Valley Manor, Eric Eisenberg. I will see you Metal Celebration Night at the Oregon Wine Experience.